my name is Dan Gomez, and this is Mental Health Super Omnia. Mental health above all. We help you understand your lived experience and identify the paths for help. It is estimated that up to 20% of the US population is neurodivergent. That means diagnosed or frequently undiagnosed ADHD, being on the autism spectrum, or even having specific learning disabilities. 20%. That means many of us are living with a neurodivergent partner or are neurodivergent ourselves. To discuss this in more depth, we brought in Cindy Ariel, PhD, psychologist. Cindy has extensive experience working with couples where one or even both are neurodivergent. Plus, she just released the book, Autism and the Two of Us. Read it, great book, Cindy. Thank you very much. Cindy, create a baseline for us here. How do autistic and neurotypical brains work differently? Give me some examples if you could.
Sure, because they work differently in every single way. Whatever comes in differently for someone who's neurodivergent. All of the information out there. So, for example, I have a really good example that just happened. I was on the phone yesterday with someone, neurodivergent. They had an issue. We needed to talk on the phone, and I was listening to them, and I was also walking outside. And then they suddenly said, "Did you just get birds?" And I said, "No, you're probably hearing the birds outside." "I just heard a finch," they said. Like, I didn't even know there were finches where I live. I don't know, and I don't know what they sound like, but they were so distracted. I had to go inside because even though this was their issue, it was important to them, and yet they couldn't focus because they heard my birds, which I didn't even notice. So that's just an example of how the world comes in so differently. Driving can be such an issue because for an autistic person, there's so much information coming in. It can be distracting and hard to drive because you have to think about so many things. And some people just don't drive because of that.
Wow.
So I don't know if that answers the full question, but that's just a little bit of how the difference manifests for all of us.
We're going to come back to that. Let's bring in Erica Kawamura,
Okay.
Director of Strategic Initiatives for Equilibria Psychological. She's a doctor of psychology, PsyD, years of experience, also board certified in lifestyle medicine. Erica, virtually everyone knows of or has had or has heard of children being diagnosed with autism, but for adults, it virtually never happened. So, what would your partner see if the partner was neurodivergent?
Um, yeah, so I think well, first I just wanted to back up and explain that autism is like on a spectrum now, so it on the one end you have people that are just never going to be able to live independently, and they might be not even nonverbal, and then about on the other end of the spectrum, then you have the people who are able to live independently. They might have like really great jobs. They might even have a few friends, right? There's just a very, I guess like from like back in, not too far back in the day, but the diagnosis that has been discontinued as, what formerly used to be called Asperger's. Like, so, they might be a little eccentric, but very functional. So to answer you, so kind of thinking about that spectrum, right? So for someone that are out in the world dating and things like that, you might not even notice that they were autistic or even on the spectrum, or they might not know about themselves. So some of the things that you might see over time, and then maybe perhaps irritate you and have a lot of conflict and hurt that we'll get into today in her book, is they might get very like fact oriented. Someone's trying to talk about their feelings and then they're just focused on the logic, or the neurotypical person might talk about like be like really hurt or like excited or just something important that they wanted to talk about, and then the person with autism might completely like interrupt or not make eye contact, or, or they might even start talking about something else, that they might have seen in the environment or something like that. Um, but on the other hand, they might have like really cool interests, except the only problem is you might not want to hear about it 24/7. Um, so yeah, or prefer to stay indoors
Interesting.
or not have many crowds, that sort of thing.
Interesting. Cindy, back to you. Very early in your book, it describes neurotypical. So I hate to use the word normal, but what many of us would consider like us, assuming we're not neurodivergent, neurotypical brains, and how being walking, you don't even hear the birds. I mean, unless you're specifically going bird watching, you're focused in on other things. The world is focused in on other things. I believe you used the phrase ableism, which
Mm.
which which frankly I hate that word. But can explain to me a little bit what ableism is.
Well, ableism is thinking that neurotypicality is normal. It's
Mhm.
it's a
Which is what I just
majority.
said.
Yes, yes. That's okay. Because that is what most people think. It's normal, but normal meaning like average or just typical. Um, so ableism is believing that what is normal and average and typical is the right way. So just like ableism was when we didn't have ramps on the sidewalk,
Mm.
ableism with somebody who's autistic is like not giving some kind of accommodation to the lighting in the room or the sound. Now, sometimes movie theaters have autistic friendly movie nights where the sound is lower, the lights are different. Maybe it's not so full, so you don't have to sit so close to others. Um, so that would not be ableism. That would be trying to counter ableism, or the idea that, going to the movies is normal. Why can't everybody just do that? That's normal because we can do it.
Interesting. Interesting. So give me an example of some of the common struggles that people that are neurodivergent have, like even household routines. In what way might household routines, if I were autistic and had a partner who wasn't, how would I be looking at household chores, or would I even be looking at household chores?
It depends because just like everybody else, some people are very neat and tidy, and some people are total disastrous messes. And then there's all that in between. Usually, in a neurodiverse partnership, there's a big difference between the two and one or the other. So, somebody who's autistic can certainly do the household chores. They might not have the same standard, they might not think about it. Uh, an example of the way this might get played out is I was talking to a couple the other day, and they just got a new dog, and they're excited about their new dog. And of course, everything the new dog does is cute and wonderful. And so one partner is washing the dishes, and the dog is doing whatever dogs do, and they're telling you they need to go out. And this partner comments to their autistic partner, "Oh, look how cute the dog is. And she's telling us she wants to go out." And the autistic person is like, "Oh, yeah, that's so cute." And the one washing the dishes is like, "But she needs to go out." And the autistic person is like, "Oh, okay, you want to take a walk with her later? We'll all go." And they just got furious. "She needs to go. Will you take her out right now?" Which
Yeah.
that was just a miscommunication, in that if the autistic person needs that direct suggestion or request, "Can you please take the dog out? She's telling us she needs to go out." Um,
Fascinating.
It's really just like that, the nuances and the tone and the nonverbals and things.
right. So that becomes,
Yeah.
half of a session, just because they're so mad at each other. Like, why
Mm.
did they get mad at me because I didn't take the dog out? They didn't say to take the dog out.
Mm.
They just were telling me the dog was cute, and the dog was cute. You know,
I love it. Um, you know, I've run across people that were described as having obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD. Is if you have OCD, do you have a neurodivergent brain? And if so, um, help us understand what that is.
you do have a neurodivergent brain with OCD.
You do.
Yes.
And
Uh,
so explain how would you know that I have OCD?
it's partly in the way well, you would have to tell me. I wouldn't know by looking at you.
Mhm.
Mhm.
You would either tell me that you have a lot of intrusive thoughts or that you have compulsions and rituals that you have to carry out, or that you're afraid of germs or have to check, the doors 26 times when most of us might check once or twice. So you would have to tell me that. And sometimes, so autistic people often have other neurodivergence. So OCD is also common in autistic people, or those tendencies. Um, Sometimes you see it in the way they may line up their toys or their food or whatever they do. So sometimes OCD is helpful. It's nice to live with a partner who has issues around tidiness and cleanliness, but it isn't always nice for them because it, can get out of control, and they can't rest, they can't relax. Sometimes they don't want to be intimate because everything in the house has to be clean first, and seriously, when does that ever happen? So,
You know, you brought up something interesting, and I know you talk about it in your book. Um, you brought up intimacy, so let's briefly talk about sex and intimacy. Um, I think the when you have that neurodivergent brain, sometimes you don't. If I understood the example correctly, you don't always know if you're touching someone in a loving way. You may be touching them too hard or too soft. Is that accurate? You may not have that right feel associated with it or understand the feedback to have the right feel. Is that part of what happens in with sex and intimacy with a neurodivergent person?
if I understand your question, that happens both ways. They may not understand how you want to be touched, but also their sensitivities, the autistic person's sensitivities, might make certain kinds of touch not feel good to them.
Yeah,
Uh,
interesting, fascinating.
but about that, I had a very interesting conversation the other day. I have a lot of conversations. That's why they're all like the other day. Because they were, I have conversations all week. Um, but so this autistic partner finally admitted that one of the hindrances or obstacles to sex and intimacy for them was that in kissing, all they could think about was like food and saliva and teeth and germs and whatever's in there and whatever's going on. And like, that's just not sexy.
Mm.
And so, like, later when they would become more aroused, kissing is fine. But in the beginning, not so much. And they felt so terrible and literally said, I just feel so wrong and I'm so sorry and this is terrible. And I had to help them both of the couple, understand this isn't wrong. This is, what your mind does and what your body does. Like, maybe you don't have to start out kissing or kissing on the lips. Like, you know, kiss other places, do other things until the autistic person lets you know that actually kissing is good now. At a certain point, they described that there's a switch for them. But you really have to listen to what it is like for any particular individual, like that deeply, because I mean, that's a different one, but it's not a wrong one.
Mm-hmm.
And they're probably not the only one.
Fascinating.
I just thought you might like a little hot story.
I do. We do. We love these stories. Two other common struggles that I've heard from people as I've talked to them, both professionals such as yourself and people in the community, have to do with parenting and socializing. Let's deal with socializing first. How are or at least what I've seen from neurodivergent people, from people with autism, is that they have difficulty socializing. They have difficulty understanding the social cues of how to have a conversation, how to be interested in what you're interested in so that we can develop a relationship. They just don't get it. Okay. Even sometimes when they're given the tools, this is what you do, express interest in what somebody else is doing, ask them questions about it, blah, blah, blah. They may know the tools, they could memorize the tools, but they don't do it. So talk to us about the issues associated with socializing when you have autism or you have neurodivergent behavior.
Yeah. So I want to reframe that a little bit.
Please.
Because both partners have issues with each other. So, and they both don't get it. They both don't get the other's point of view. So an example is, and there's a lot of examples with just let's take coming home from work.
Mm-hmm.
So coming home from work, first of all, the neurotypical person is happy to be home, can't wait to see their partner, wants to talk all about their day. Their partner probably walks in exhausted from dealing with everybody and sometimes doesn't even say hello. They just go downstairs or upstairs to their computer, and that's problematic right there.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's wrong. It's how they're feeling strongly. So the neurotypical person does not get how exhausting today was for their partner. Their partner also doesn't get, yes, they should come in and at least say hello, maybe say, I am exhausted. I just need 20 minutes. There's ways to deal with it, but even from that initial example, they're not getting each other. And then when they do come together to talk, let's say the neurotypical person wants to talk about the office gossip and what so-and-so did and what their boss did that annoyed them. And the autistic person, isn't really focused on the social stuff. They want to talk about the great, reprogramming of the software they did today and go deep into the weeds on that. And neither of them can understand either one of those things. So it's not wrong. It's being able to be like, well, I don't understand a word you're saying. Maybe try to ask a couple questions, or maybe, that really deep dive in the technical stuff, do it with your friends. Maybe we could find a third topic that we could both agree on is interesting. Or maybe we each get 10 minutes to talk about our whatever we need to. But you're talking about your office gossip. That's what? Why is that interesting to an autistic person? They don't know the people. They don't, the social stuff doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you care? Weren't you at work working?
Well, it's kind of like that small talk piece, type of thing, where it's like fluff or it's, not important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, Erica, when I think about this whole socialization thing in many partnerships, as I've talked to men, they will actively delegate to their partner the role of social secretary. You're in charge of making all the friends, you're in charge of inviting people over, God help us, or in charge of accepting invitations with this one or that one. And so therefore, as a guy, I won't have any friends. I'll have my partner, whoever that is, and then my partner will have control of all that. Is that an example of just typical normal behavior, or is that in and of itself neurodivergent?
Oh, a meeting for the met. I
From the
mean,
guy's perspective.
from the guy's perspective, I mean, I'm not sure if I would call it neurodivergent, but I think it's just like more socialization and stuff like that. Because I've also known other flips where, the guy is more of the social one, always out with the guys and, wanting to go out and, things like that. And that's where it's like, it's interesting though, because some of the examples that you've brought up, it's, I it's like on the one hand, like, labels are important, like, especially when there is like an actual thing, like,
Yeah.
there's communication going in and out are two different things. And then there's also a way to like normalize it a little bit too, of like, do we need to put a label or diagnosis on everything? Because like some of the examples that you've said, it's like, and I guess like the difference is like just in that nuance, because the example you gave of like, you come home and it's like, oh, I just need like, don't talk to me, right? I think there was even a TV show back in the day, like, shh, don't talk to me, I just need a 5 minutes quiet, okay, and then we can like hang out, and or the people who's like always like the talker, and then you've got the one who's like less quiet, the one who's always wanting to go out because they're extroverted, and then the introvert that's just like, could we just do something quiet, stay at home, whatever, because being around all those people is just too much, right? But I think the nuance I picked up from when you were describing an example, Cindy, was that maybe like the neurotypical person, if it was like two neurotypical partners and one is just like, dude, are you mad at me or something? You just went upstairs, and then they'll be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I just had a really bad day, nothing against you, right? And then go from there. Whereas the if it was a neurodivergent couple, I guess you call it, right? When one's then they may be like, well, you just like went upstairs. I'd be like, well, yeah, because I was tired, I didn't even see you there, or however it goes. And then it might just be more of that extended conversation of why it was a problem to go upstairs when they were tired, and didn't understand why the other person was hurt, or why it could have been seen that way, right? How, I guess the empathy part of it would be hard for the autistic person to understand why the neurotypical person was hurt by that thing, and it was perceived that way. So yeah.
Interesting.
So they can both learn to accommodate each other in those moments, right? At least say hello, but understand that your partner's not going to have maybe a full-on conversation right now.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you just agree there's this half an hour when they come home that not much is going to happen. They're going to go and be alone for a while.
Mm-hmm.
That's not terrible.
So we want to get to some common solutions here to what we've been talking about, but I want to bring out one other big important piece, which is parenting. Okay. Many
Yeah.
people will have children, maybe only one or two these days, but their view of how to parent, neurodivergent view versus neurotypical view of parenting, might be entirely different. How are they potentially different, given that everybody has different views on how to parent?
Again, in a lot of ways, there's a lot of differences. So all the sensory stuff that autistic people present with, kids make it really hard. They're loud, they're unpredictable, they're messy. There are all kinds of things that can be problematic. So sometimes in those situations, the person who can tolerate more noise, is the one who is there for the play dates, or, goes to Chuck E. Cheese because that's a wild and crazy place. Um, Also, the autistic person can be really great as a parent in other ways. They're very good, teachers, and they can be fun with their interest, bringing their child into their interest or becoming interested in what the child is interested in. So how they work together has to be the same way they work together with every other issue in the relationship, and talking about it and agreeing about it and coming to some agreement together. Like with the example we were just talking about, coming home from work, maybe one of them, these days both people are often working. In either case, either one of them is home with the kids all day, or they were both working and they both come home. Either way, both people feel like they need a break, so that the other person should take care of the kids for a while and let them have a break. And sometimes, like, neither one of them has the resources for that. You know, they want to hand off the child. It's exhausting. So that has to be a big kind of compromise. Like, what can we do? Maybe we need help for that hour, or maybe someone can come home an hour later because they drive around or sit in the car for an hour, get the break they need so that they can enter knowing they're going to have to take care of the kids, or, you know, things like that, or ways to take care of the kids. Everybody says, oh, don't, you know, put your kid in front of the TV or screen time, but sometimes parents need that. We can't judge that moment.
Electronic
So,
babysitters are absolutely fantastic inventions. Just saying that.
yeah.
um, so let's talk about some solutions. Here we are. We're in a relationship where, you know, one of us is neurodivergent, one of us is neurotypical. The neurotypical one probably has tons of frustrations. What are you going to do? Actually, both of them probably have tons of frustrations. What are some of the common solutions that you can start to employ?
The most common solution is learning how to listen to each other and learning how to appreciate whatever differences the person may present. It may be very disappointing to hear that your partner is like grossed out if you start kissing them. No one wants to hear that. You have to be able to hear that, and also to talk about, okay, what can I do about that? How can we make it work for both of us? So that's the first thing. You have to listen and appreciate all the kinds of differences and imagine all of it. If you can't even imagine all these things, but you can't even imagine that while you're talking to your partner outside, having a nice cup of coffee or a glass of wine on the porch, and all they could hear is like all the noises of the outside, and they can't even listen to your great, interesting conversation. Um, you might have to
So
go
if the
inside.
most well, if one of the best solutions is communication, it's probably one of the most difficult, right? Because here, you know, throughout the dating environment, which was a long time ago for me, you've spent all this energy attracting your partner, becoming interested in your partner, hopefully getting them interested in you. You're now married, or you're now coupled up in a committed relationship of one sort or another. So that's over, right? Or is it not over? And then how do we bring that back?
Bring
So
back
this is
the
that
feelings.
level of communication that allows me to engage and get over whatever problems having a neurodivergent or a neurotypical relationship entails. How do I get back to that communication point where I actually want to pay attention and deal with it? Can I just do that on my own? Does one partner, hit the other one upside the head and say, we need to talk about this? Or probably not a
Sometimes.
common phrase these days. But how do you do that?
But sometimes you do. Sometimes you do have to insist that we have to talk about some things. Sometimes that has to be planned, and it can start as little as 5 minutes a day. And sometimes it has to start there because some people have very little tolerance of that kind of communication. You have to start slow. In the beginning, I'm not sure it's a getting back to. It was a different thing in the beginning. It was a different kind of communication. It might have looked like what you want, but it was all, we're all on our best behavior trying to attract somebody. It's not it's not that anybody, it's not a bait and switch. We all do that, every single person, right? We don't go out, dressed in our sweats and, not taking care of ourselves and um, cursing or whatever we might do later in the house. We don't do that at first. We listen and we be all interested, and we are all interested because we're interested in bringing you into my world.
And you're also only seeing each other like in the beginning, like a fun planned activity or like these moments,
Yeah,
right? Or maybe it's even a day, but or weekend, but you're not living with them. And more and more you get to know the person and the little, like you said, the quirks, right? Like it might have been interesting and appealing or unique in the beginning, and then that
that's a great
coupled with
point.
everything else, it becomes annoying.
Yeah, but it's a great point too, just bringing up um, not living together. You didn't have to worry about who was taking out the dog, doing the dishes, the laundry. It, none of that matters. That's on your own. You just come out, right, and have
And
fun.
they may have, actually had like their social reserves as well because they got their social time with their, with the person they're dating, and then okay, now they're in their house, they got the quiet, they could do whatever they want. Yeah.
And you might not have noticed that when they asked you out on a date, it was to a very quiet place, or maybe it was to a low-key picnic or whatever it might have been.
Hmm.
You only slowly realize, how come we never do this thing?
Right. Or
Or
like,
how come you
going
don't
out
like
to
it?
eat, or yeah, going out to like a or like, right, like family functions. Before has always been like one-on-one perhaps, but then, over time you start to introduce your networks, and maybe there's like a family function going on, or, friend's wedding, friend's party, right? And then,
Exactly. And
yeah.
then it's like, some people think, oh, well, they were a little quiet or they seem a little awkward, maybe, but they're so nice. And, if you start a conversation, they can have a great conversation or.
Well, I guess like, what do you do in those situations? Like, with the social events and stuff, what the, like, for example, like, because there are going to be a lot of functions, whether it's like
Yeah.
like a wedding for one of the family members, relatives, or a friend's wedding, like a best friend's wedding perhaps, or a birthday party, or just party, right? Like holiday
Yeah.
parties, whatever. And then the neurotypical person feels kind of in a bind with loyalties, where
Sure.
if at the last minute, let's say the, okay, it's really important to you, I'll go, and they do this thing. And then what ends up happening is like at the last minute, they'll say like, I can't go, I can't go, I can't go. So then does the person say okay and keep making excuses that the person's not feeling well, but then also feeling bad that they left the person home? Um, or do they both not go? And then the neurotypical person is like, man, my social life is just shot now, or getting frustrated that, they were really looking forward to this event. How do you negotiate that?
So many ways. Ideally, you're open enough with your friends and family to tell them my partner is autistic and they get overwhelmed and they really want to come and they really want to see you and they might last 5 minutes or, whatever it is that might be true for them. And you would be surprised. Many families and many friends are like, okay, that's totally fine, dude. Like, we're so glad to see you. And if you need to leave, like, yeah, go outside, take a walk, whatever you need to do. We're good. You know, um, short of
Whereas I can
that,
see, and then that's hard to interrupt, but I
yeah,
can see that statement being very important because now they know why, because a lot of times there's so many misassumptions that goes on where does a person like us? Like, and then the
yeah,
other
yeah,
person might, and then the autistic person might be like, I don't think they like me, and then there's a lot
yeah,
going on. Yeah.
yeah. And they might actually love your family, but you can't tell
Right.
because they
You never
spend
come.
5 minutes, yeah, or
Yeah.
they go to sleep
They
or
don't
they do
talk,
whatever.
or yeah. Hmm.
Hmm. Um, but also another thing you said, last minute. So occasionally there are people who last minute need to change up. Again, ideally, if you have the kind of partnership that I'm talking about, you would know that together. You would plan that. It wouldn't be last minute. It would it would be, okay, what are we going to do on the day of if you suddenly feel like you can't come? What's our plan?
Mm-hmm.
And before that, even, what's our plan so that you can be most comfortable coming? Do you want to say we're only going to go for an hour? Do you want to say you could take breaks whenever you need, but I'm going to stay and you come in and out? Or you can, you want to come, but maybe you feel more comfortable just playing with the kids. There's all kinds of ways, and it depends on what they're comfortable with. But trying to tell them, here's how you have to be. You have to come with me. You have to sit with the adults. You have to make great conversation. I want you to be the life of the party. Like, that's impossible. So sure, last minute, they're going to be like, I can't, I just can't. Because that's what they're envisioning that you want them to do.
Mm-hmm.
They can't do that. Some people can do that. And then you get mad, when they come home. Why can't you do that all the time? Why can't you do that for me?
Right,
So,
because then you're able to. So yeah.
yeah.
Mhm. Okay.
But it probably took everything they had to do that for you. Like,
Hmm.
that is a major, major gift, and also talent if someone can pull that off.
Yes, I can imagine that also like minimizing any guilt as well for the neurotypical person. Like let's say, the autistic person says like, you know what, I'm just gonna, I'll catch up with them one on one, or, maybe we can do something separately or whatever to celebrate. And but I'm gonna stay home. But that's because I
Hmm.
want to stay home. Like I'm not gonna feel any ill will. So like maybe
Right.
then the neurotypical person won't feel guilty and would be able to just enjoy and go.
Which would be great, because
And not
usually
feel bad.
yeah,
Yeah.
the autistic person is probably relieved.
Right, right. They're not like thinking, oh, they're out and, they chose to go out instead of choosing to be with me and now I'm home alone. Like, like
Mm,
some people might say it, but they might actually enjoy it. So that's a good
yeah.
thing to kind of parse out. Um,
Yeah. I guess the opposite of that is sometimes the neurotypical person feels they don't want to have to go out without their partner. So they're like kind of
exactly.
resentful of that.
Right, right. They have their expectation or wish that if, especially if it's all couples too, like they want, you know,
Sure.
yeah.
So let me ask each of you a couple of questions, very specific. And Erica, you brought up this whole issue of guilt that you both were talking about. Let me reframe it a different way. Is there a reason for the neurodivergent person to feel ashamed about the way they deal with the world, not wanting to be with two other couples or three other couples that you go out with, not wanting to spend time with family, maybe liking them or not liking them, but not wanting to spend time with family? Early in the book, you used a phrase about masking, trying to fit in with typical people, neurotypical people. So it just made me wonder: is there, as a human, am I ashamed because I'm not like you?
Did you ask that to Erica or me?
Yeah, well, I'll accept it from either of
Anyway,
you.
I think they are ashamed because they have been shamed a lot of times throughout their life. You're wrong, you're bad. Why don't you come out and play with your cousins and say hello to your aunts and uncles? And
So there is an element of shame in there. There shouldn't necessarily be, but there is. It's just been built up over time.
that's ableism. Yeah.
That's
It's like,
ableism.
why aren't you like all of us? Why aren't
Fascinating.
you like your cousins? Why aren't you like your siblings? What's wrong with you?
Yeah, still hate the word, but I understand it a little bit better. So, Erica,
Like they have to fit the majority.
Right.
Where they're feeling like they have to fit the majority and people are forcing them to fit into that.
We've interviewed a prominent therapist who recommended a once a year mental health and relationship check-in. Is this one option, having that once a year marriage relationship check-in when you have the partner who's autistic, that would help validate feelings and find a path forward in those relationships? Or is this not an example of where one should have the mental health couple or marriage check-in?
I think every couple should have a mental health check-in or relationship check-in to make sure how are things going or how was your day and all of that. And
Are you?
go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just wondering if you're talking about a check-in with a professional or a check-in with each other.
Professional therapist, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's what they had
Oh, I'm
actually
sorry.
recommended.
Okay. I didn't do that podcast. I didn't realize it was actually with a mental health check-in. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a dental checkup. Like,
Yes, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's
Like
exactly
once a
mental
year you see
checkup.
the doctor. Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly what yeah, that's the one of the analogies he made too. But
That
So you
seems
think
like
that makes sense?
I think it seems like a good idea. And just like with a dental checkup, once a year might not be enough.
right, because I'm
Yeah.
thinking I think it really depends on the couple. Like in this case, because there's literally like that the differences in how the information comes in and out, like Cindy had mentioned in the beginning, that it might require a little bit more of like the tune up of saying no, even though it feels like or it's perceived that way, from each partner, the intention behind it was different. And I guess like that kind of leads me to one of my questions where all of this is like great if both partners are willing and invested and making equal effort, right? Like with any couple too, but one of the things that you mentioned in the book was like, like apologizing, taking accountability and all of that for things that might have unintentionally hurt the other person or offended the other person, and it could be either, right? It could be either the neurotypical person getting hurt or offended or the autistic person. But something that I often see or hear, I only see individual clients, but something I often hear from individual clients is that, they tell their spouse, over and over again, we have the same exact argument. I tell him or her that this bothers me or this is hurtful or whatever, and they say, I'm sorry. And then I didn't mean to, I'm sorry, I'll change, I'll do it differently. It gets better for a little bit. They're changed the behavior for a little bit. And sometimes the ultimatum forces them to be more, and then it just goes back, and it keeps going back to the baseline. So it's like, and I guess like they often feel like fed up with like,
Yeah.
it's the same cycle, they say they're, and then they get to the point where they start to question, like, do they even care? Are they even genuine with their sorry? Because sorry is just the word, I need to see action and it never
Right.
changes, So I guess like I'm thinking about that where,
Yeah. It's a
I
good
can
question.
imagine that happening a lot, just because they're literally wired differently, that they have to be conscientious for each of them. So how does that typically pan out with,
So there's a couple things that could be going on
Mhm.
with that. Um, I just lost where we were. Um,
Like
Want to
say
the
it
rephrase
again
it?
real
behaviors.
quick.
Go ahead.
So say it again. I'm sorry.
Oh, Dan, did you want to
No,
rephrase? Oh,
rephrase for us.
okay. Um, like where the
Just real
partner
short because I just lost it. I had my answers and then I
the partner gets fed up with the same behaviors, hearing the same apologies for the same behaviors. They promise they'll change. They change for a little
yeah.
bit, and then
Okay.
it goes back.
So
Yeah.
one thing that could be going on is autistic people can have a hard time generalizing what we think is the same thing or is common
Mhm.
sense.
Okay.
So in a different situation, what we think might be the same thing, it looks totally different to them on a different day.
Interesting.
Um, So, well, okay, you might say, I don't know, I don't like the way you put the dishes back in the cabinet. I need you to put them back this way. I say, okay, I will do that. And so they do that, except they do, maybe the bowls are now a problem. I told you it's really important to me that the dishes are put together. Oh, you told me the dishes, but that was the bowls.
Mm.
Okay, now the mugs are kind of a mess. This is totally different. It's mugs, it's not plates, it's not
Mm.
bowls. So every single thing can sometimes seem like I told you this a million times, but in an autistic point of view, maybe you didn't.
Interesting.
So, Cindy, you see quite a number of people that have um, that are in this situation where one person is neurotypical and one person is neurodivergent.
Mhm.
Um, there are many marriage therapists out there or relationship therapists out there. How do I know I should be seeing someone who has experience with a neurodivergent person in the relationship? That's number one. And number two, do you end up diagnosing people or do you just have a little mental checklist? Oh, yeah, this fits this pattern.
I tell people what I see. I will tell them, oh, a lot of autistic people think the way you do, or something like that. I don't diagnose them, per se, officially, like, oh, you're autistic. Although there are a
Mm.
couple of times I've done that. When it's just so obvious. I know what I'm seeing.
Mm.
Um, and sometimes I know what I'm seeing, but I know if I tell this person that, they'll never come to see me again. So I may
Mm.
not mention it
Mhm.
that way. But that's when I might say, oh, that's an autistic point of view too, or something like that. Um, yeah, go ahead.
So so how do I know once
Oh,
you once you're in a marriage or partnership therapy
yeah.
session, how is that going to be different from a regular session versus one where the partner is um, neurotypical? Is there any
Yeah.
difference?
Yes. If you're in a neurodiverse relationship, you need a neurodivergent affirming therapist.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the therapist is more than likely going to push your relationship to be neurotypical
Mm. That's an excellent point.
because that's what they know and that's what they believe in. If they don't, I mean, anybody can learn this other stuff and be open to it. And then it's not that the therapist needs to be neurodivergent, they need to be open to
Yeah.
neurodivergence. And it
Yeah.
makes a huge difference. It feels good for the neurotypical person at first to be validated, like, see, I was right. You have to be more like
Mm.
me and do all the things my way. But ultimately, it hurts them both. The autistic partner feels way more marginalized, like that was a terrible experience for them. It was just everything they've ever had happen to them all their life just happened in a session. And the neurotypical person doesn't ultimately learn anything except that they're right. But where does that get your relationship? It's not helpful.
Fascinating. Fascinating. Is there or is there a a success story or a bad situation where we can kind of understand where people are at and then how whether they can get better? I imagine when you start to see people, they're already in a place where they know they're in trouble.
I'd say most often that's true. They're already so fed up and so annoyed just about the thing we were talking about a few minutes ago, about because I've told you this a million times. Also, what I didn't get to say with that is another thing that you do there is talk about what, okay, I have told you this a million times. I'm also assuming the best of you. I believe you love me. What is making it so hard for you to do this thing for me?
I love that question. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that is where you have to start. What makes this hard for you? I know you don't want to annoy this person and get a divorce because you can't put the dishes back properly. And sometimes the issue is that the neurotypical person has to maybe lower their standards about what's behind the cabinet doors.
Mhm.
Some people don't like
Fascinating.
that.
Fascinating.
So kind of going back to Dan's original question though, like, it's that's, important to know when looking for like a neurodivergent couples therapist, but if the person does know that they have, autism, but what about those situations where, neither of them knows that that is, a huge factor in like their miscommunication and just not understanding each other. And then, they go to like another couples therapist who also doesn't pick up on, those tendencies.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
so I guess like, because I'm sure there's a ton of people out there that are in that situation. Um, and even if one of the spouses are in, individual therapy, they only know from the neurotypical person's account, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
um, they may not pick up on it
Unfortunately,
either. But so I guess like what should somebody do in that situation?
I mean, I would suggest that most therapists get some kind of training in
Mm.
neurodivergence so that it's more common rather than our whole educational system as psychologists or therapists, social workers is neurotypical. So why don't we learn that there's different kinds of people? That sounds kind of ridiculous for people who are treating people, you know.
Mm.
Um, and I see a lot of couples who have been through what ended up for them, sometimes even traumatic experiences with therapists who didn't know when they also didn't know. And then they finally know and they finally come and they're finally like, oh my gosh, like
Mhm.
we wish we knew this so long ago before we were at this point where I don't even know where to begin and where, if we can never get back to it. And sometimes they
Clearly,
do.
identification, understanding some of the identification markers is important, which is why we spent time there in the very beginning. I want to recognize the amount of time that we've spent and be respectful of your time. So I'd like to give each of you 1 minute to kind of summarize and speak about what's important to you. And Cindy, you're going to get the last word, so you're going to go second. Erica, you'll go first. In addition to your 1 minute, Cindy, don't forget to talk to us a little bit more about the book and why we should buy it. Erica, go first.
Yes. So
Summarize for
thank you
us.
for joining us today, Cindy. I've certainly learned a lot about, about everything from your book because this is an area that I wasn't, too specialized in. So it was like very interesting to hear like the what goes in and out and all the communication barriers, the nuances and everything. So I definitely certainly learned a lot. So definitely check out the book if you can relate to some of these topics. But at the end of the day, remember like you're working together, right? So like you're both wanting to improve the relationship. You both want to feel seen and heard and accepted and loved. And so like keeping that, in mind while you're treating each other and communicating. And I think what you said toward the end of believing that things aren't done intentionally to hurt the other person and taking the benefit of the doubt. And relationships take work. Like in a lot of some of the topics that we've talked about, they can be relatable to any couple, whether neurodivergent or not. It's just that there's this added layer in the communication nuances that are occurring because every couple has communication issues. I've seen a lot of people saying the other partner doesn't hear me, they're not emotionally available, right? All of that stuff. But it's just that how it's communicated is where it's getting lost in the neurodivergent couples. So over to you, Cindy.
Thank you.
Yeah, so many good
Cindy.
points. And I'm kind of amazed there's that many points because usually in self-help kind of books like this one, uh, when I read them, sometimes I think like they could have been done in like 3 pages or like 3 major points. And I like to think I had more to say, but also there are some 3 major points, which is like people are different and we all want to be loved and cared for who we are. And we want to be understood. And really, that's what the whole book is about, understanding and caring for each other and for people. And yeah, so I see more than neurodivergent couples. I see a lot of both people neurotypical couples. And I do think that there's a lot here that just comes from my practice and how I work with people, and all couples hopefully can benefit from my book, which is out now, I think, in paperback, and in another month it'll be out in hardback. Or maybe the opposite is true. I'm not sure. But it's out in Guilford,
I'm
and
pretty
you
sure
could
you can
find
buy
it
it on Amazon. I'm pretty sure you can buy it
already.
on Amazon. Yeah.
Okay. So, well, that's just like very new, very fresh. So here you go. Um,
Excellent.
yeah. So
All right.
that's all I got.
Well, uh, thank you. And let me say that our sponsor today is Equilibria Psychological and Consultation Services. It is an insurance-based provider whose mission is to help individuals achieve their personal potential and long-term growth by compassionately and respectfully helping clients live in balance. Visit equilibriapcs.com, equilibriapcs.com. You can look for them on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Also look for me on Instagram, Daniel J. Gomez 24, and on LinkedIn. Now for the disclaimer. I am not a medical professional. I am not providing medical advice. The opinion of our speakers is solely their own. This podcast is copyrighted and cannot be reproduced without the express written consent of EPCS Management, LLC.